Раз. 1, 2, 3. Раз.
Потому что, как бы, если кто-то будет руку поднимать, чтобы нам не я так не видел, я тоже. А если еще включили? Так, ну, пока не сидят. Все, да? Уважаемые дамы и господа, от имени ректора нашего вуза, профессора Максимцева, и от себя лично имею честь открыть данный семинар. Разрешите приветствовать наших гостей, финских друзей, специалистов в области высшего образования, также наших коллег, которые участвуют в программах российско-финского образовательного контента, и пожелать работе данного семинара, который 4-й раз собирается в Санкт-Петербурге, но впервые на нашей площадке, пожелать ему плодотворной работы. Также мы приглашаем вас в следующий раз и просим, если это возможно, сделать площадку нашего вуза постоянно действующей для проведения таких семинаров. От имени Генерального консульства приветствие произнесет Йонас Heiskanen.
Kiitoksia oikein paljon ja on todella ilo olla täällä tänään.
У нас язык английский и русский официально.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. So it's not a problem. I could do Russian, but my Russian is a little bit rusty, so it's, I'm very glad to be here today on the behalf of the Finnish Consulate General, and it's really a pleasure to see so many people here and to witness the good cooperation between the Finnish and Russian schools of higher education. We have seen during the last years this number of contacts between our universities and institutions increasing, and it's really been a pleasure. And also that the interest from the side of the students is shared by the both sides. For example, when we at the consulate, we organize every autumn during the Europe Days, like a presentation event for the Russian students. We usually get about 800 Russian students visiting this event, so there's a tremendous interest. And also on the other side, when we every year we organize an event at the consulate between the Finnish companies and the Finnish students studying here in St. Petersburg. We get a full house of Finnish students interested in about continuing their careers here in St. Petersburg. There are quite many issues connecting Finland and Russia, and this cooperation between the universities is cooperation at its best, and it's a common interest to increase the exchange of students and researchers between our countries. And to be short, I wish you all the success during today's discussions, and all the best to you. Thank you very much. Спасибо.
Уважаемые коллеги, переходим к рабочей части нашего семинара. С докладом выступает Анита Лейхкагенен, замминистра образования Республики Финляндия. Пожалуйста. Please.
Somebody help to get the dias here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to be present in the seminar and to give you some ideas what we think about this cooperation between Finnish and Russian higher education institutions, both universities and universities of applied sciences. Mikä se näistä oli? Here? This one? Joo, kun mä en näe oikein mitään. Okay. Yes, thank you. So now it works. Yes, about the new perspectives for the increased cooperation, I think there are quite a few global trends that both of the countries have to follow. And we all know that the international cooperation at global level is increasing, and it is affecting higher education institutions, both education and science and research very much. And there will be still more mobility of students, staff, and faculty at all levels. This is what we believe in Finland, and this seems to be one of the biggest global trends in higher education. It has been analyzed by many different organizations, whether it is the European Commission or the OECD, and the result is always the same. More mobility and less kind of purely national higher education institutions or higher education policies even. And indeed, in research, we always say that that has been international by definition from the very beginning. But I think that we, in now both countries, know that this is not exactly true, because we have seen the sort of immense increase in international cooperation in research, scientific cooperation, and especially mobility of students in the past 20 years. And especially in Finland, this past 20 years, it has really been the era of international cooperation. We used to be a very national system, but since the early 1990s, we've been working a lot towards to get our institutions to be more international, both sending students out and receiving students and faculty. And at the ministry, we are still not happy with the level of international cooperation between our institutions. We want to see a kind of fully blown international environment in Finland for all our students, and we do our best to encourage our institutions to get engaged in international cooperation. And obviously the changes at global level, they affect also higher education. We see the increase, the growth in Asia, and that will affect the higher education landscape a lot. We can see that Chinese universities, they have a lot of money and they are investing in education, higher education, and especially in the quality of research and research infrastructure. And they are becoming more and more attractive to international students and faculty. And also in Europe, we have to put more effort in increasing the quality and attractiveness of European higher education. And that's why there have been processes like the Bologna process, where we will show that European higher education is of world-class quality, and not all the students need to go to the States, but you have high-quality places also around Europe. But still, we can see that the competition is becoming tougher and tougher every year. Also, in many countries, in Russia and in Finland definitely, we have had a public higher education system. This has been the norm, but now we can see that the increase of private institutions is becoming the new kind of norm, both in education and research also done by private funding. And this, of course, implies that when students are mobile between nation states, in many cases they need to get, for example, their student loan, their grants, that they need to be portable from one country to another. And this hasn't been a problem for Nordic countries, but in most other systems you can't get your student grant with you if you decide to study in another country. And also the financing and funding of universities and other institutions of higher education is changing. We can see that normally in old days, universities got their funding from the state, and it was based on some historical facts mainly. But now we see this market-like mechanisms in the allocation of funding for universities. And in Finland, we started the change towards this kind of system in the early 1990s, where the universities, and now then also universities of applied sciences, they actually have to compete for their funding from the state. So we have this formula-based funding for universities, and you have to be quite good on all the indicators if you want to increase the level of funding from the state. And we think that this does actually good for the quality of education and research. So nobody can be certain that they get a certain amount of money from the state, but you have to earn it. It is public funding, and the education is still free for students, free of charge for students, but the university or the polytechnic, they have to earn the money. And this seems to be a kind of growing trend at global level. And also quality assurance. If we take a look again behind like 10 years, it was enough that we said that all our universities, all the disciplines, they are of good quality. The education is superb and the research is of world-class quality. But now we can actually, and we require all the institutions to have a quality assurance system in place, and we have these joint European standards and guidelines how to measure quality in universities. And this has meant a tremendous change for students and staff, because you are actually evaluated and assessed for the work you do, and the students, they are little bit becoming like consumers or clients to higher education, that they can actually require and demand good quality education. And many nation states have become very, very interested in international ranking lists, and I know that perhaps here in Russia and definitely also in Finland we have a kind of ambivalent relation to ranking lists. We know that they exist and we try not to make too much of them, but we know that they matter. Especially if you want to have international cooperation with Asian universities, the first thing they ask is, how do you rank in these ranking lists? So the competition is becoming higher and higher. But I think really the good part in this is that the students and the staff, they are aware of the need for good quality, and also the taxpayers who fund the system, that you have the social accountability part in this mechanism, and that's good, because we don't want to give taxpayers money to any purpose that we don't know that are actually delivering the things we want them to do. And cross-border education and transnational education and the international cooperation between higher education institutions. I remember when we started to talk about this cross-border education and transnational education, many people were quite concerned and worried about what effects it may have on higher education. We were a little bit afraid of the heavy competition and thought that we at the ministry and in the parliament, we make up the national policies for higher education. But when you see more and more of cross-border activities and transnational education, you can see that especially for a small country like Finland, it is a limited area and space where you can do national higher education and research policy. You have to take into account what is happening in all parts of the world, and you have to adjust yourself to it. And this has been very important for us. And so we've been very active in the Bologna process, and we think it was a very useful start, that you don't want to harmonize the system, but you want to make them more comparable, compatible and coherent systems. And this is very important for the European higher education area, so that it is transparent and people from outside Europe can actually understand what is the concept of European higher education. So we can still have different kinds of structures, but they need to be more comparable and compatible. And this is succeeding to some extent. But now that the Bologna family is about, I think, 48 countries already, you can see that there are very many higher education systems, and it is not as compatible as it could be. So there is still a lot of work to do, and we can see that too many higher education systems in Europe are too far apart, and the funding systems are too far apart, and also perhaps the quality of higher education in Europe. There are very big differences between our national systems still. But many international organizations are doing their best to make sure that highly qualified professionals can move freely at European level. Of course, the Bologna helps in this, and also the Lisbon Recognition Convention. So it means that when you have your qualification in one country, you will have it recognized in other countries that have signed these conventions. And these are for the benefit of European labour market and especially for our young professionals, so that they can enjoy the internal market or the global market for higher education graduates. Also thematic cooperation and different disciplines and areas of study, but also, as I mentioned, in quality assurance, for example. Very important that we share the same values, the same guidelines and standards at the broad level in European countries and systems of higher education. And now there are many actors in this field, perhaps too many. We have the European Commission, we have the ENCA in the Bologna family, we have UNESCO, and then obviously in the Nordic level, Nordic Council of Ministers has been very important, and also then ASEM, which is the cooperation between Asian countries and European countries. And all these organizations, they have a different set of rules. They are compatible, but they are still different, and this is a little bit challenging for many member states. And then bilateral cooperation. Even though we work at multinational level in international organizations, there's nothing that we can compare to bilateral cooperation, because there you can have, it's less complicated if you really want to do it. So that's why in Finland we place a great value to bilateral cooperation between Finnish higher education institutions and Russian institutions. And we want to build on this bilateral cooperation still. Well, what is happening, and this is of course a Finnish interpretation, what is happening in Finland and in Russian higher education landscape. And we see a lot of common goals and common processes going on. In both systems, we are placing more and more interest and emphasis on the indicators or the performance level of the systems. So we want to know which are the numbers of graduates for the labour market in various disciplines. It's very important for society. So it is a big issue in both countries to adjust numbers to right disciplines or specific areas. What kinds of professionals do we need in the future? And also the scientific level of scientific cooperation or scientific performance. And this is very difficult, obviously, for universities and universities for applied sciences. And we hear a lot of criticisms against our indicators when we say that we want to see the numbers of scientific publications from our universities in various disciplines. And we use the citation index also because we want to see the quality and how the rest of the world see the status and quality of our scientific research. And these are again some indicators about the social accountability of higher education institutions. So it is not enough that you just say that you are good, you have to produce evidence. So this is today's world. And then also the societal outreach of higher education institutions. We know that universities and universities of applied sciences, they play a major role in social betterment schemes in all countries. So they serve wider societal needs, and also they have to attract new audiences to higher education. In Finland, we think that our education system is quite equal. Everybody has equal opportunities, but we still see that if you come from lower socioeconomic background, it certainly has an effect on your educational choices. And we have to be aware of these things, and we try to make the system even more equitable than it is today. And this is the case in many different places. And then teaching and learning outcomes. Sometimes we say in Finland that we are, as you know, we are doing tremendously well in PISA, in the OECD PISA survey. And we know what our 15-year-olds know, but we don't really know anything about what our higher education graduates know. But what is comforting is that nobody else knows either, because we don't have clear international surveys or measurements to measure the learning outcomes of higher education graduates. The OECD exercise, the AHELO, seems to be very difficult to get up and running, but we would be quite interested to see how we compare at international levels. And also the quality of our staff and faculty. Somebody has said in Finland that the most important decisions the university actually do is whom they recruit to be in their faculty and how do they recruit as their students, because the quality is dependent on these factors. And the impact of higher education institutions is emphasized in both legislations of our two countries. We were actually so interested in the Russian new Education Act that we had a trainee in the ministry who translated the Russian legislation into Finnish, and we've been distributing this Education Act to different players in Finland so that we know what is happening here and what the big reforms are going on in Russia. Well, in Finland we've been very eagerly reforming the whole higher education system. There was a big university reform which was finalized, to some extent finalized 2010. And then all the universities were given a fully autonomous status. They were made legal entities on their own. And now we are doing the same to our universities of applied sciences, or polytechnics as they are called in Finland. So very big changes, and they are big changes in administrative and legal terms, but also in funding and financial terms. And when higher education institutions enjoy more autonomy, they can be free to cooperate at international level and also to cooperate with business and industry, which we see very important. So they are profound reforms in our countries. And we also changed the funding formula for both sectors of our higher education system. So now both funding formulas, they are outcome-based. They don't get anything for free, as it were. You have to earn the money, and this is a tremendous change for universities and universities of applied sciences. An internationalization agenda. As I said, we've been working quite hard for internationalization of the whole system for about 20 years, but we still want to push it further. And we have new goals for both sectors, again, in international cooperation. And when we follow the Russian reform, we see, as I said, a lot of similarities, and also the reform of the third cycle education is of great interest for us, because we would like to do more cooperation in researcher training and in research. And as you know, in our country, most of the basic research is done in universities, not outside the universities. And we've been also trying to reform the third cycle researcher training part of the university activities, and we think that we could still have more cooperation between Russian and Finnish institutions in this. And of course the internationalization in Russian universities is a big thing, and there it is the similarity with our agenda. And at the multinational level we work in many different places together. Well then, if you take a look at the international mobility in Europe and how the student flows go, and here we can see that the and Russian students are quite interested in studying in Finland. And we are very happy for this, because it is not a coincidence. We have actually put quite a lot of funding to fund this project, so that we make Russian students familiar with our system in these short-term exchanges, and then we get a lot of degree-seeking students. And from Finland, we still see that most students go to the UK to study, many also to Sweden. And here we can see that not many Finnish young people are willing to study their degree in Russia for some reason. And this is definitely something that we would like to change. We try to encourage also Finnish students to come and study in Russian universities. And this is why these kinds of bilateral seminars are so important, that we get to know each other and to get to know what is on offer. And then this is a picture about the mobility, short-term mobility at the European level. And I'm very pleased to say that Finnish students and also teachers are quite eager to take part of their studies or work partly in other European countries. And here the balance is actually quite good in the Finnish case. But again, we can see that there are big differences how people go from Finland to Russia and from Russia to Finland. And here we would like to see also that we could increase the funding for these bilateral exchanges, and there we need, of course, bilateral funding, because we've been very active in this first or FIRST program, as we call it, and we would like to increase the volume of this exchange program. And at least in Finland, we have seen that the short-term mobility of students has been very influential when we have been trying to increase the quality of education and teaching in Finland. So when you send students out and they see different kinds of system, different kinds of styles of teaching, they put pressure for the universities also in Finland. So this is very influential. And this is the FIRST, I don't know why we called it FIRST, but it is FIRST student mobility. And there we can see that the number of students from Russia, it has been steadily growing, but the Finnish students again to Russia, it hasn't been growing so fast as we would have liked to see. But this is on the political agenda that we would like to increase the volume in this program. Last April, about 1 year ago, we had a very good meeting in Helsinki. It was in the framework of Council of Europe, and there our two ministers of education met. And they decided, it was a very open and honest discussion between the two ministers, and they decided to have a joint working group to tackle some very concrete problems between our two systems. And one of the problems seemed to be the recognition of academic degrees. And we understand the starting point or points of departure for the new Russian legislation, but we think, I think I can be frank enough to say that we think it's a bit unfair to many Finnish higher education institutions, because they all follow our higher education institutions. They are obliged by the Finnish legislation to follow the same rules in quality assurance. So we think that they should be treated in the same way. We are happy that the University of Helsinki is in your list, which the degrees can be recognized automatically, but we would like to see all our higher education institutions be included in this list. So now this joint working group, there are 3 people from our administration and from Russian ministry, and they are working to solve this problem. And I think this is just the way that we should go ahead at bilateral level, that if we see problem, we try to solve them. And also we are talking about how to increase the volume of bilateral mobility. Then there's the Nordic-Russian working group, and then obviously the complexities increase when you increase the number of countries. But we like the Nordic cooperation framework is very good, and it is still very unbureaucratic if you compare to European agendas, and much can be done in this framework too. And of course, a big advancement was made in the EU level when we had the Horizon 2020 Russia program, where there's a massive increase of funding. And also in bilateral contacts at within the European framework, there's a lot of funding and a lot of new tools that we could make use of. And the strategic Forum for International Science and Technology Cooperation, Finland has been particularly active in this, and now we have started a kind of pilot phase between Finland, EU and Russia, and we expect great results in this. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chair, a lot has been happening, and we are happy to encourage our higher education institutions to get involved with higher education institutions in Russia, and we see that there's a lot of space and room for this, and we can see that the national policies, what to do with higher education and research, they are coming more and more similar between our 2 countries, and this, I think, would make cooperation at concrete level even easier than it has been so far. Thank you very much for your attention.
Уважаемая госпожа замминистра, Россия все-таки евроазиатская страна, поэтому мы разделяем красивых женщин и руководителей. Поэтому кто-нибудь переведите, а то Вервин. Переведи. Все, for you, like with Minister of Education. Yes, it's our Katerina the Great. And you will be the Katerina the Great of higher education of Finland. Thank you. Уважаемые коллеги, слово для доклада предоставляется губернатору Мати Велаханен.
Dear Mr. Vice Rector, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to participate in this seminar on behalf of South Karelia from Lappeenranta, because we are so close to each other. And I have been working there since December, so this is my first trip to a university in St. Petersburg, but I guess it's not the last one. The Regional Council of South Karelia is taking care of the regional development of our region. We are small, we have only 132,000 inhabitants, 2 major cities, Lappeenranta and Imatra. Our university is the Lappeenranta Technical University, and we have the polytechnics Saimaa, which is organizing this event. So we have this higher education, and we have students also studying here in St. Petersburg, and I'm very proud of that this practical exchange is happening, because that's the most important thing, to learn these two nations, how they live, how they study, what's the level of science, what are the research possibilities, and to make personal contacts. And after that studying period, you can develop business relations, cultural relations, or just to visit another time. Our region is the most often visited by the Russian citizens. Last year, the border was crossed 10.4 million times. Over 4.5 million people crossed this border in Lappeenranta, Imatra, and our region. And daily, we have in Lappeenranta weekends 15,000 Russian citizens visiting our city. So this is very live cooperation. And the region is proud to promote this cooperation. What we have done and what we can do is the theme of my presentation. We have this European program which is called European Neighbourhood Partnership Initiative. The first program is about to end now. We started 2007, and this will be the last year to realize the projects. In fact, that program didn't start 2007 because it was delayed by almost 3 years because of the international events. That time it was Georgia. And there was also some ratification problems and so on. But finally, this program has been quite successful. The frame, what we had at our disposal was roughly 72 million euros. And the Regional Council of South Karelia is the administrative body of this program. So we more or less have that money available at our account to distribute for the applicants. This funding has been rather attractive because the grant is rather big. It can be even 80% in some cases, usually roughly 70 or something like that of the real costs. We had 3 calls for proposals, and we were able to award 47 standard projects and then so-called 8 large-scale projects. And with these large-scale projects, I mean infrastructure on the border, because we have to repair the border crossing points and the roads to the border crossing points. And 50% of the money was put into the infrastructure. So for the other projects, roughly 37 million euros. So as I mentioned, this program will be ending in the end of this year. Maybe there will be a slight delay, but we hope that all projects can be closed within this year. Regarding the universities and politics, your university has had partnerships in 3 NB projects. Saimaa has been partner in 2 projects, and the University of Lappeenranta has been lead partner in 6 projects. So I was telling in train to Anneli that maybe these figures can be a little bit improved in the future, because maybe you could be also more, let's say, active in these projects. The applications have been there, but not all have been approved, because this is based, this financing, on competition. So you have to get points in the selection committee, and then the best points are awarded. This important program is very relevant for the cross-border university cooperation. And that tool has been useful especially for the South Karelia region. Not only our universities and polytechnics, but also South Savo, Kymenlaakso, even also the Helsinki University have been taking part into these projects. Some project examples. For example, one grant was given to the project which was how to use efficiently natural stone. Because, as you know, even the famous church here in St. Petersburg is partly made of Finnish stone. I think here are several buildings which use our stone already in the history, but we try to find better ways to make use of our natural stone resources. Then, naturally, also the social well-being has been funded, health sector, and especially with the emphasis on entrepreneurship, business, and education. Then also there has been a program how to make young people real scientists in Russia, in southeast Finland. And this type of cooperation project has been very useful for the universities which took part in this project. Then also forest is naturally one topic, not only stones, but forest naturally, because Finland is largest country maybe in Europe with Sweden in pulp and paper industry, and especially South Karelia is having a world-class forest industry. So that know-how is also available for this cooperation with Russian institutions. And also our university is very well known in energy technology, and energy efficiency has been also one title of the project. So what will be the future? Now we are discussing on the future program. It has already name, which is very positive. It will be Southeast Finland, Russia, CBC 2014-2020 program. Very long name, but this is the real thing what we do together. So the program area covers St. Petersburg, Leningrad Oblast, South Karelia, my region, and the neighboring regions, Kymenlaakso and South Savo. So these are the core areas which will be mainly getting this funding. And we also had last week here in St. Peter meeting of the programming committee, and we agreed already 3 main themes for the project. Naturally, business and small, medium-sized enterprises development. This is naturally the focus, how we could develop our areas in the field of business cooperation. But the second item, support to education, research, technological development and innovation. So this fits totally to you. So please start to think possible future common projects using this tool. And naturally, there will be also this infrastructure, so we have to still improve this roads and border crossing points. The program should be prepared in June, and it will be then sent to the European Commission for their approval. So before June, we need to know more exactly what we mean by these 3-4 items. And that's why, if you have any good ideas, you can turn to me already during this seminar, during the coffee break also, to think about what type of ideas you would have to use this instrument. So this Commission approval should be in the first part of the next year. Then Russia and Finland and European Union should make the final financial agreement. It should be ratified, and then we can start to call for the proposals early 2016. I'm sorry this takes still time, but there are 3 partners, Russia, European Union and Finland, and it's a diplomatic process which will take some time. Russia is funding this project by 25%, Finland by 25%, and European Union by 50%. The exact size of the program has not yet been defined. The original plan was that we could have approximately 100 million euros for this Southeast Russia program, so it would be more than the ending program, and we would be very happy to receive that funding. But given the situation now, which is a little bit tense with European Union and Russia, there has been some, let's call them rumors, that there would be some cuts to this program, so let's see whether that 100 million can be kept as a budgetary ceiling. But that also will be settled before June. So after that we know, for example, how many million euros we will have available. And if we take that theme number 2, I would guess that in any case, for that number 2 theme, we would have available roughly 15 to 20 million euros. Okay, it's not that much, but given to, let's say, very good projects, you can do a lot. It's for 7 years, you have to remember. So, but this is one possibility for your future cooperation, and we do our best to ensure that this new instrument is available as soon as possible. So, in case you are more interested, as I suppose, all information will be found at the program's internet page. To finalize, I would say that I was personally graduated from the Helsinki University of State Sciences was the main subject, and the political history was. So I'm not so very well aware of this economics. But what I have learned during my profession career, I would say that there is nothing to be done if you don't have the finances available and if the economy is not in good shape. So this is the fact I have learned in my life, and I'm sure that you are studying very correct topics, because you will keep society alive and stable, because you will keep good care of economy, which is the basic fundament for our happy life. Thank you very much.
Слово предоставляется Анне Пертеле.
Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые друзья, меня зовут Anneli Pirttila, и я ректор Саменского университета прикладных наук. К сожалению, я не говорю по-русски, но здесь по-английски. So this is the only Russian language I know, but I'm learning. I've actually taken a language course in Finnic, which I can recommend. They have a very, very high quality language center here in the university. But now I'm going to tell you about the cooperation on the Finnish-Russian border from the, let's say, grassroots level. I come from Saimaa University of Applied Sciences, which is located in Lappeenranta and in Imatra on the other side of border. Actually, we are located nearer to St. Petersburg than Helsinki. It takes only 1.5 hours by train to St. Petersburg and more than 2 hours to Helsinki. So this is something that has really affected our cooperation with Finnic and with other Russian universities here in St. Petersburg. But we are a small university of applied sciences, even on the Finnish scale. We have about 3,000 students. Our staff is about 300. So compared to Finnic, we are small, as Finnic is compared to us very huge. But coming here by car, we talked with Dmitry Vasilenko that, it's not the size that's so critical in cooperation, but it's more than understanding each other, having mutual projects, mutual interests that meet in the cooperation. That's the most important thing in what we are doing. And since last year, Finnic has been our strategic partner. We have an agreement on the different forms of cooperation that we are having with this new merged university. But then now I want to tell you about how our University of Applied Sciences, what kind of process we had in the last 10 years of internationalization. So what happened from the year 2003 coming to 2014, so the kind of things that we have been doing in Russian cooperation. I came from industry to the University of Applied Sciences world in the year 2000, and I think it was in 2003 that the Ministry of Education, they encouraged all Finnish institutions of higher education to prepare an internationalization strategy. So we started that work also in Saimaa University, which was called South Karelia Polytechnic at that time, but in principle, the same organization. And what has been characteristic with these 10 years, this 10-year period from 2003 to 2014, is that student and staff mobility have been growing steadily, not only into Russia, but also, and from Russia, but also to other directions in our institution. And especially in Russia, there is a growing flow of study exchange, and also from Finland to Russia, practical training and work placement has been growing very much. And also during this 10-year period in my institution and in other Finnish institutions, there are more and more degree programs in the English language, which gives the possibility and opportunity of foreign students of coming to Finland and taking their degrees or come as study exchange to Finland. But Matti Vialainen here told that, you know, about that he's from, was it state something, political history or something. You know, my background is production economics, which means that I am half an engineer and half an economist, and then what I'm going to do now is show you some figures because I'm fascinated by different statistics. So I want to tell about the development using the statistics of the Finnish Ministry of Education. So when we started doing our internationalization strategy, I am a bit embarrassed to show you this slide. When we started preparing the strategy, we looked at the directions where our students went to study abroad. And we found out that they are in strong contradiction to our strategy, as Russia also at that time was the focus of our strategy. So 30% of our students went to Malaysia. And we really, you know, we couldn't understand, so why is this? Why Malaysia? But then we found out that there is a very fascinating university on the Penang Island, and you know, the students liked to spend some time there, but it had nothing to do with our strategy. And I think that at that time, 2003, the situation was a bit similar in many universities and many institutions all over Finland, so that the universities did not know very much or did not guide the directions that the student or staff mobility went to. I am a bit embarrassed to show this, but in order to be honest, this is where we started in 2003 doing the strategy. But then we started the work and we did a very rude analysis on our international affairs and international operations and on the exchange programs. So we concentrated and we were focusing resources on strategically significant international partners, which we defined with the Pareto principle in an ABC analysis. So we made an analysis of the institutions and we divided partners into 3 categories. The first one, strategic partner institutions, which is maximum 1 or 2 or 3 partners, 3 at the moment. And then key partner institutions from 20 to 25 partner institutions, and then a network of partners all over the world in order to make sure that the students and staff get opportunity to study in a specific country or in a specific institution if they are, for some reason, have interest in that. But when doing this analysis, we decided that the strategic partner institutions, FINEC, one of them, would be the institutions that we invest resources, time and money to. And then key partner institutions, not just mobility, also R&D projects, other type of cooperation, but then to other partner institutions, not so much. Just maintaining the network and mainly student exchange, staff exchange, but not much else. So this is what we did first time, the first rehearsal in 2003, 2004. And then the criteria for strategic partners we defined in the following way. First, does the student or staff exchange, does it function well? What kind of feedback do the students and staff give when they come back? Or what do the foreign students and staff coming to our institutions, what kind of feedback do they give? And how well do the faculties of the partner institution match our needs or our faculties? And are there fruitful possibilities for good cooperation, fruitful cooperation between different departments and different faculties? Or is it only one faculty, or the kind of possibilities that is given? And then, of course, the possibility to double degrees and joint degrees, it was also important for us. Joint research and development project, I'm sorry to say that so far there have been some projects, but it could be better. It could be better with Russian partners and with partners from other parts of the world. And then also, as we are a university of focusing on applied sciences, so the partner countries' relevance to the business and industry, especially locally in our area, is something which matters in the criteria of strategic partners also. And then from 2003, when we come into 2010 statistics, this is mobility from our university, student mobility, outgoing and incoming students. So Russia, not anymore Malaysia, but Russia is by far the biggest country. This is where it should be, but this is a result of determined work that we've been doing in the cooperation between Russian partner universities, FINEC and other universities, especially in St. Petersburg. So Malaysia has dropped significantly on the list. So then when we look at the international student mobility from the Ministry of Education and Culture statistics, so when you look at the different universities of applied sciences in Finland, you can see that Saimaa, which is a very small institution even on the Finnish scale, so we rank quite high on the ranking list of student mobility. The other institutions that are higher up the ranking list, they are much bigger than our institution. And these are absolute figures. They have not been in any way compared to the size of the institution. So we are quite satisfied with this ranking, so because we have been working very hard on getting our position on this list so high. But then when you look at the student mobility in Finnish universities of applied sciences to Russia, so you can see that our position is even better. So we are 151, and the next is Mikkeli, which is also close on the southeastern Finland and the northwestern Russian border. So together we rank very high on this list. Not Malaysia anymore. So also, if you look at the research university side, the Lappeenranta University of Technology ranks high on the list of student mobility to Russia. After University of Helsinki, they are the next one on the list. But if you look at the absolute figures, so that's a bit less than 50, and we are 151. So we have been actually doing a lot of work on this one. So the University of Applied Sciences side has been working very hard in developing this student exchange. And also, if we compare the mobility of staff, of teachers and educational professionals, the universities of applied sciences rank very high. And again, compared to our size, we are not so high on the list and in case of students, but high enough if you think of our size. And then if you look at teacher and educational professional mobility to Russia, again, we are the best in Finland. More than 100 of the mobility is outgoing or incoming from Russia. So very high figures. And then the Center of International Mobility in Finland, as I saw that was in the Deputy Minister's presentation also, if we look at those CIMO statistics as comes to different regions in Finland, in higher education, the most active region is South Karelia, both incoming and outgoing students and mobility. So I think that what matters in South Karelia, what matters in our area, so close to the St. Petersburg metropolitan area, is really this proximity. It's of course hard and deliberate work that we have been doing on both sides of the border, but it's also easy to cooperate across the border because we are really so near. You can also see that on the other side from Etelä-Savo, the Mikkeli region, where they also can utilize this proximity to the St. Petersburg metropolitan area. So this being so close, it really matters. It gives you a special competitive advantage in this international cooperation. And also, as it has been discussed a lot about the, getting more foreign people to come and study and live in Finland. Also, if you look at the share of Russian people of the population of different regions in Finland, so South Karelia ranks very high. I won't say that it's because of having the universities doing this, getting foreign students to come in the area, but I think it has some kind of effect to our position here also. And Kymenlaakso, which is North Karelia, also close to the border, they obviously the people come and go to both sides of the border. And then also, if you look at the share of Russian students' degrees in Finland, the number on the level of whole country is 12% of the degrees that foreign students take in Finland are Russian students. But if you look at the Saimaa University of Applied Sciences in Lappeenranta, or Lappeenranta LUT, Lappeenranta University of Technology, the percentage in Saimaa is 52%, and in Lappeenranta University it's 37%. So a bit high figures for both institutions. And as we have this advantage of Russian proximity and the exchange, also the share of foreign students in total in our area is really high, nearly 12% of all the students. But if you come to the future challenges of kind of cooperation that we are having with Russian partner institutions, I would say that the biggest challenge is how to maintain the good level of student mobility and staff mobility in a world of growing choices, because we've been seeing that the Russian students and also the Finnish students and staff, they have a lot of opportunities to mobility all over the world. So how can we keep Russia to Finnish students and Finland to Russian students so interesting that, you know, we can continue with this high level? That is a challenge because the number of choices has been growing very much. And one problem also, which were also presented in Ms. Lehikoinen's presentation, is that how to encourage Finnish students to study, exchange, or practical training and work placement in Russia. That is one problem because it could be livelier, it could be increased a lot. And then, as come to research and development activities in these strategic partnerships, that's really, that is an area that has to be intensified. And that's why I was glad to hear that our mayor of the region, so he said that encouraged us to apply for funding for this kind of, with FINEC. We decided with Dimitri there that we will apply for funding for interesting projects in the future. That is an area that has to be developed a lot. Thank you for your attention.
Спасибо большое, уважаемые коллеги. Программа первой части семинара закончена. Приглашаем вас на кофе-брейк, который состоится в соседней аудитории.